What we just witnessed might be the single most disgusting display of unchecked aggression in WWE history. Paul Heyman, the wise man, the special counsel to the tribal chief, the man who has orchestrated decades of championship reigns and manipulated legends, is now a broken shell of himself. And the worst part? WWE management sat back and let it happen. I'm talking about Bron Breakker transforming into an absolute monster, crossing every line, and leaving one of the greatest managers in professional wrestling history traumatized. And before you click away thinking you know this story, I guarantee you don't know what really happened behind the scenes. Stick around because what I'm about to reveal will make your blood boil. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. Hello viewers, if you're new here, please don't forget to like and hit the subscribe button for daily updates on WWE Raw. When did WWE decide that ending careers was acceptable entertainment? When did we collectively agree that a 250-pound wrecking ball like Bron Breakker could target a 58-year-old non-wrestler with zero consequences? Because that's exactly what happened. And here's what makes me absolutely furious. Here's what should make every wrestling fan rage tweet, rage comment, and demand answers from Triple H and WWE management. They saw this coming. They knew Breakker was spiraling out of control. They watched him injure opponent after opponent. They witnessed the reckless spears through barricades, the unprotected throws into steel steps, the intentional harm he's been inflicting for months. And what did they do? Nothing. They fed Paul Heyman to this rabid dog like he was disposable, like his 40-year legacy meant nothing, like decades of building stars, creating moments, and sacrificing his body for this business was worth less than getting Breakker over as a heel. And you know what the worst part is? Some of you are going to defend it. Some of you are going to say it's just wrestling, or Heyman knew what he signed up for. No, that's where you're wrong, and I'm about to break down exactly why this situation is more dangerous, more reckless, and more infuriating than anything we've seen in the modern era. Drop a comment right now if you think WWE crossed the line, or tell me I'm overreacting, because this conversation needs to happen. Let's start from the beginning, because the full story is even worse than the clips you've seen on social media. For weeks, Paul Heyman has been caught in an impossible position. Roman Reigns, his tribal chief, has been locked in a war with the bloodline. Solo Sikoa has taken over, and Heyman? He's been the bridge between two worlds, trying to maintain loyalty while surviving in an environment that's become toxic. But here's where Bron Breakker enters the picture, and here's where everything goes from bad to catastrophic. Breakker, who has been on an absolute tear through the mid-card, decided that Paul Heyman was the perfect target to send a message. Not to Roman, not to Solo, but to the entire WWE landscape that he's the most dangerous man in the company. Now think about this strategically. Heyman is not a wrestler. He's a manager, a talker, a legend who has given his entire life to this industry. He's had heart issues. He's in his late 50s. He is, by every definition, a vulnerable target. And Bron Breakker knew that. That's what makes this so calculated, so cold, so absolutely unforgivable. The attack itself was brutal. We're talking about a man who weighs 250 pounds of solid muscle launching himself at full speed into someone who has no business taking that kind of impact. The spear that Breakker delivered wasn't a work. It wasn't pulling back. You could hear the air leave Heyman's lungs. You could see the shock in his eyes as he crumpled to the mat like a broken toy. But Breakker didn't stop there. Oh no, that would have been too merciful. He picked Heyman up, looked directly into the hard camera with those psycho-tired eyes, and delivered a second spear that sent Heyman through the barricade. Medical staff rushed to the scene. Heyman was motionless. The crowd went silent. Even the commentators seemed genuinely concerned, breaking character to check on him. And Bron Breakker? He just stood there, chest heaving, staring at the destruction he caused, with zero remorse. Now here's what WWE doesn't want you to know. Here's what came out from multiple backstage sources that I've been able to confirm. This wasn't fully scripted. Yes, the concept was planned. Yes, Heyman knew he'd be taking some kind of bump, but the intensity, the recklessness, the fact that Breakker went into business for himself and delivered that second spear with way more force than was called for, that was all Bron. Backstage, there was chaos. Producers were screaming. Agents were furious. And according to one source close to the situation, Paul Heyman himself was livid once he got backstage and realized how reckless Breakker had been. But here's the thing that makes my blood absolutely boil. WWE is spinning this as great heel work. They're praising Breakker for commitment to his character. They're acting like nearly injuring a legend is something to be celebrated. Let's talk about who Paul Heyman actually is, because I don't think some of you understand the gravity of what we just witnessed. Paul Heyman isn't just a manager. He's not just the guy who talks for Roman. He is, without exaggeration, one of the most important figures in professional wrestling history. ECW, that was his vision, his creativity, his genius. He took wrestlers that the mainstream rejected and turned them into legends. He created a revolution that forced WWE and WCW to evolve or die. Steve Austin's ECW promos, that was Heyman behind the scenes, coaching him, helping him find the stone-cold character that would change wrestling forever. CM Punk's pipe bomb, influenced directly by years of Heyman's creative philosophy. The Shield, Heyman advocated for those three being put together. Brock Lesnar's entire modern run, that's all Heyman's storytelling. This man has given 40 years to professional wrestling. He's sacrificed relationships, his health, his financial security at times. He's been through tables, taken chair shots, been bleeding in ECW rings when he had no business being in physical altercations. He's had heart attacks, actual cardiac events that could have killed him. And WWE let a 27-year-old who's been in the main roster for less than 3 years treat him like a crash test dummy? Where's the respect? Where's the protection for your legends? Because let me tell you what message this sends to every veteran in that locker room. Your legacy means nothing. Your health means nothing. Your decades of service mean nothing if WWE thinks they can get a viral moment out of sacrificing you. And before you say Heyman agreed to it, let me ask you this. What choice did he really have? You think Paul Heyman, who's fighting to stay relevant, who's trying to maintain his position in WWE's new regime under Triple H, who knows how quickly you can be forgotten in this business, you think he had the leverage to say no? That's not a choice. That's coercion. That's taking advantage of someone's desperation to stay in the game they love. Now let's talk about Bron Breakker, because this is where the conversation gets really uncomfortable. Is Bron talented? Absolutely. Is he athletic? Phenomenal. Does he have potential to be a main event star? Without question. But here's what nobody wants to admit. Bron Breakker is dangerous. And I don't mean dangerous in the cool, edgy way WWE wants you to think. I mean legitimately, recklessly, career-threateningly dangerous. Let's look at the facts. In the past 6 months alone, Bron Breakker has injured or come dangerously close to injuring at least 7 different performers. His spear, which he performs at full speed with zero regard for his opponent's positioning, has sent multiple wrestlers to the medical area. Ricochet, injured working with Breakker. Multiple NXT talents complained backstage about his stiffness. And now Paul Heyman, legitimately hurt. But here's what infuriates me about WWE's handling of this. They're encouraging it. They're booking him as this uncontrollable force and using his real-life recklessness as part of his character. They're rewarding dangerous work instead of correcting it. Do you know what that calls that in any other sport? Negligence. If an NFL player consistently delivered late hits that injured opponents, they'd be suspended. If an MMA fighter repeatedly threw illegal strikes, they'd be banned. But in WWE, you get pushed. And look, I know some of you are thinking, wrestling is supposed to look violent. That's the point. You're right, it's supposed to look violent, but the entire art of professional wrestling is making it look devastating while keeping your opponent safe. That's the first thing you learn in wrestling school. Bron Breakker either doesn't understand that principle, or worse, he doesn't care. And WWE's response? Put him in more high-profile matches, give him more TV time, let him target one of the most respected non-wrestlers in the company. It's insane, it's irresponsible, and it's going to end with someone getting seriously hurt. Actually, wait, someone already did get seriously hurt. Paul Heyman. We just don't know the full extent yet because WWE is keeping those medical details private. The real victims. But you know who the real victims are in all of this? It's not just Paul Heyman. It's every single wrestler in that locker room who now has to wonder, am I next? Am I going to be fed to Bron Breakker for a storyline? Is my health and safety going to be sacrificed for ratings? Think about the psychology of that. You're a mid-card wrestler. You've worked your entire life to get to WWE.